That's right. President Biden presided over the annual White House turkey pardon and granted clemency to Peach, Blossom, and before anyone noticed, Hunter. Yeah, look at that turkey.
And the crowd of Democrats, they all cheer, yay, pardon Hunter. We don't even know what crimes he committed. Jail the enemies of the Democrat Party and liberate all Democrats from their crimes. $27 million foreign money for the Biden family. Defied the congressional subpoena, violated the FARA Act. If you weren't Hunter Biden, you might be in trouble about some of those things. That's a for sure. Well, happy Tuesday once again, and welcome back. A story out of the Middle East. Now, we were just laughing about this. There's the Middle East has been on fire forever and ever. I've been a consumer of news from the time I was 3 years old. I had reporters in the family going to the Middle East to cover the wars when I was a small child. And there was a fun movie from 1979 called Breaking Away with Dennis Quaid, among other people, and Daniel Stern. And they were teenagers, bicycle racers, University of Indiana, breaking away. It was a fun movie, a sweet movie, and there's about 4 teenage kids hanging out with each other in Bloomington, Indiana, and hanging out around the University of Indiana and riding their bicycles. And one of them is a big bicycle racer in the movie. And a local police officer whose older brother of, he is, I believe, the older brother of one of the 4 teenage boys, sees the kids hanging out. They're up to no good. 1979, the cop walks by, just making small talk.
How you doing, guys?
Well, we're a little disturbed by the developments in the Middle East, but other than that.
But other than that, and that's 1979, a little throwaway funny line in a movie about high school guys hanging out with each other. And it hasn't changed much, that's for sure. Although there was peace in the Middle East when Donald Trump was in the White House and Arab countries were signing peace deals with Israel. But never mind all that. Today, the headline is Middle East latest. Israel hits Lebanon's capital. That's Beirut. As EU urges it to accept ceasefire with Hezbollah. The European Union is lecturing Israel to accept a ceasefire. And I was looking into this morning, and one of the things I discovered is that Hezbollah is saying, well, we want a ceasefire. We want Israel to say that there's a ceasefire, but we want to be able to continue to strike Israel without Israel striking us back. And left-wing mental cases in the EU and the United States and the American media, they're all in favor of that, right? Now, the Associated Press reporting this morning out of the Middle East, allegedly, Israeli warplanes struck the Lebanese capital of Beirut and its southern suburbs on Tuesday, that's today, a sign that it was aiming to inflict punishment on the militant group Hezbollah, that's the Army of Allah, in the final moments before any ceasefire takes hold. At least 3 people were killed and 26 were wounded in the crowded neighborhood near downtown Beirut, according to Lebanon's health ministry. And if you can't believe them, who can you believe? Now, the European Union's foreign policy chief, Joseph Borrell, said on Tuesday that there were no excuses for Israel to refuse to implement a ceasefire with Hezbollah. I can think of several excuses right off the top of my head that I could explain to the European Union's foreign policy chief, Joseph Borrell. I'll explain to him what's actually going on there. He seems like kind of an ignorant guy. He must hang out with Alec Baldwin or something. Saying all of Israel's security concerns had been addressed in the U.S.-French brokered deal. Now, this is not to end the war with Hamas, which is still ongoing in the Gaza, or with the Houthis in Yemen also waging war against Israel, or with Iran which is the master, the puppet master behind the curtain. But never mind that, because we got this. So that's what the foreign policy chief said, and I thought that's just amazing. But further down, naturally, in the Associated Press story, among the remaining issues as they negotiate for peace with the Army of Allah, among the remaining issues was Israel's demand to reserve the right to take military action should Hezbollah violate its obligations under the emerging deal. Now, that's just classic Middle East stuff there. I don't want to curse, but that's a lot of bourgeois. And how do you explain that? Israel is saying, well, okay, we'll sign a peace deal. But if Hezbollah strikes us again, then we reserve the right to hit them back. So, but you see the sequencing there. Hezbollah would have to violate the peace deal, the ceasefire, and then once they violated the ceasefire, then Israel reserves the right to strike them again because there's no more deal, right? And the phony corruptniks at the EU and their wanker pals at the United Nations and in the Biden administration are saying, well, wait a minute. Hezbollah reserves the right to strike you, but that doesn't mean that you can go striking them back. And what that means is no ceasefire, no peace deal, because that's not a peace deal. If you're Israel, it's not. But Hezbollah, well, they just want a break. They want Israel to stop destroying them. So the deal is that Hezbollah, and this is the Biden administration, is in this up to their corrupt eyeballs, that Hezbollah doesn't have to stop striking Israel or, killing Israelis or taking hostages or doing all the stuff that they do so well. But Israel cannot retaliate, and retaliate necessarily implies that you were hit first by the other guy, right? Now you're retaliating, but that's not part of the deal. Therefore, no peace deal. There will be no peace deal. And if Israel succumbs and says, okay, peace deal, then Hezbollah will strike them immediately just to poke the bear. And the so-called international community that the left loves so much, man, oh man. Hezbollah began attacking Israel October 8th, 2023, a day after Hamas attack and the Hamas's attack in southern Israel, setting off more than a year of fighting. That escalated into all-out war in September with massive Israeli airstrikes across Lebanon. That's because Lebanon, the Hezbollah in Lebanon, are waging war with Iran's backing, waging war every day against Israel. So they dialed it up in September. And now the news media is doing their part on behalf of Hamas and Hezbollah and the Ayatollahs in Tehran. But that escalated into all-out war in September, massive Israeli airstrikes across Lebanon, and an Israeli ground invasion of the country's south, where you're going to find all the people attacking them. Hezbollah has fired thousands of rockets into, listen to this, Israeli military bases. They sure miss a lot, don't they? Cities and towns, including some 250 projectiles on Sunday. Today is Tuesday. That was day before yesterday. And they're like, yeah, we want a peace deal, but we're Hezbollah. We get to keep killing them. And that makes sense, right? Israel would not accept that deal, but the Biden administration is pushing Israel to take a deal that doesn't stop Hezbollah from attacking. And says, and when Hezbollah attacks you, you cannot strike back. So only a moron would sign up for that peace deal. And, Israel may feel public pressure from the globalists, the global pressure to sign on to a deal like that, knowing that Hezbollah will strike them within a matter of days, probably. They'll take a long break and sit around and drink tea and, do whatever they do and get some time to breathe. And then they'll start attacking again because that's what they do. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, so many big ones. Let's go to the front page of the Washington Times, your newspaper of record, not the Washington Post, which is just garbage, isn't it? Yes, it is. Absolute trash. But the headline on the front page of the Washington Times, freed from election fraud charges. That's the near banner headline. Front page above the fold, top of the Washington Times. Special counsel extends prohibition on prosecution of president-elect. Tom Howell Jr. and Alex Sawyer writing the piece, journalists at the Washington Times. A federal judge on Monday granted special counsel Jack Smith's request to dismiss the federal election fraud case against President-elect Donald Trump, ending the criminal prosecution that accused Mr. Trump of trying to overturn the 2020 presidential election. In a signed order Monday, Judge Tanya Chutkan dismissed the case without prejudice, which leaves the case open for possible refiling after Mr. Trump leaves office in 2029. Let's take a look at the statutes of limitations on these matters, too. The one-page order by the judge, Tanya Chutkan, an Obama appointee, so you know that she's corrupt, said Mr. Smith's motion is hereby granted. Now, this, of course, gets very convoluted and into legalese very quickly, but Mr. Smith, the special counsel appointed by the Democrats to lynch their political enemy, Donald Trump, Mr. Smith said he had consulted with the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel and concluded that he should drop the case before Inauguration Day, January 20th. Mr. Trump, who has long maintained that Biden's administration concocted the prosecution in an attempt to derail the presidential campaign, which appears to be entirely true, has vowed to fire Mr. Smith within 2 seconds of starting his term. The special counsel said the office's prohibition on prosecution extends to the president-elect's case. Mr. Trump was indicted as a private citizen, but was elected to another term in the White House during the prosecution. That prohibition is categorical and does not turn on the gravity of the crimes charged, the strength of the government's proof, or the merits of the prosecution, which the government stands fully behind, Jack Smith wrote in the filing to a federal court in Washington. So they're saying, hey, we stand by what we're prosecuting here, but we can't prosecute a sitting president of the United States, and since he's going to be sitting president again after January 20th, providing the Democrats don't stop that from happening, right? So there we go. Now, in a social media post, Mr. Trump posted that all the criminal cases against him are empty and lawless and should never have been brought. Over $100 million of taxpayer dollars has been wasted in the Democrat Party's fight against their political opponent, me, Trump said on social media, on Truth Social. It was a political hijacking and a low point in the history of our country that such a thing could have happened, and yet I persevered against all odds and won, Trump said. The Trump transition team hailed the special counsel's move as a triumph, saying today's decision by the Department of Justice ends the unconstitutional federal cases against President Trump and is a major victory for the rule of law, Communications Director Stephen Chung said. Now, this is a big deal, but the Democrats are putting some of it on pause because they're hoping that, Mr. Trump serves out 4 years and they're going to try to do everything they can to disrupt and corrupt that. Then they would like to bring the charges back again in 5 years because that's what communists do. That's what the left does. And that's who these people are, basically. You know that a recent reanalysis of a study shows that 1 year after having an abortion, women tended to exhibit a 50% higher likelihood of first-time psychiatric disorders needing treatment and an 87% higher likelihood of personality and behavioral disorders. None of those things are good things. This isn't women's health care, of course. It's the exact opposite of that. But the great organization Preborn's network of clinics, well, they welcome women in there with open arms, and they show the mom an ultrasound of their own baby. It's a wonderful thing, surrounded with love. And they allow the woman to choose life-affirming choices that will change her life forever. When they choose life, the young mothers, they're offered assistance for up to 2 years, including maternity clothes and diapers and counseling and a whole lot more. Preborn helps treat the whole woman. Now, that's real care for women, and the baby, too, growing inside of her. Donating to Preborn is quite simple. All you have to do is dial pound 250, pound 250, and say the keyword baby. Pound 250, keyword baby. Or you can go online, Al Gore's amazing internet, to preborn.com/plant and make a contribution, whatever you can. Save a life. All gifts are tax deductible, of course. And Preborn has a 4-star rating as a charity. Yeah, so charges dropped. The Washington Post has it, too, on their front page. Judge dismisses final federal case against Trump. It's a bitter headline over here, though. Indictment in January 6th case is the last to fall. Department of Justice doesn't allow prosecution of a sitting president.
Now, Jack Smith left the door open for charges to be brought again in the future after Trump leaves office in 2029, when he'll be 82 years old.
Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. Eric Trump, son of Donald John Trump, on television last night when we learned that Jack Smith would be dropping cases against him, but they want to reserve the right to indict him when he's 182 years old later on. Eric Trump is having none of it.
The irony of Jack Smith is, he brought this case to try and make sure my father never got elected, and I actually think it was Jack Smith who might go down as one of the very reasons my father got elected, right? It's kind of the law of unintended consequences. He will go down as a figure who literally tried to subvert democracy, who tried to put a president in jail for no reason to benefit his political class.
The old Russian playbook. I've got one more soundbite I want to share with you on this also, Jonathan Turley, because this is a big deal, but they're still holding out hope that they can politicize it years from now and still go after the people that they hate so much, pro-American people, people that fly the American flag instead of burning the American flag. I was talking about Jonathan Turley, professor extraordinaire of law at the George Washington University. There's another George Washington University story today, too. Does it involve hating the Jews and anti-Semitism? No, not today, it doesn't. Now, Jonathan Turley talking about the special counsel, Jack Smith, and dropping the cases against Trump, at least for now. They never give up hope. They're playing the long game like the jihadis, like the Chinese communists, They've got a 100-year plan, the left does, to destroy America. But Professor Jonathan Turley on the Jack Smith, once we heard Jack Smith is dropping, went to the court, said, hey, can I drop this case? Yeah, sure. Go to an Obama judge appointee, so you know that she's corrupt and political. Jonathan Turley.
Smith was like a captain who would soon be without a ship or crew, and he had to dismiss this case. It wasn't by choice. What Smith knew is that this election would have the effect of the largest jury verdict in history, that if the president was elected, he was out of a job, and that turned out to be true.
And that turned out to be true. That's he's going to be out of a job. So He really didn't have any place to go. It's true. Remarkable stuff. Yes, sir. Now, just because the Democrats are in charge here, we've got some headlines like Europe preps for World War III. And that is kind of an important headline, ought to be. Also, Vlad the Impaler Putin, who's a communist. So he cares as much about children as the Democrats do, which is not at all. But Putin bans adoption of Russian children to nations that allow sex changes in children. I'm sorry, what? That's right. Human Events has the story. David Creighton at Human Events. Putin bans adoption of Russian children to nations that allow child sex changes. It's extremely important to eliminate possible dangers in the form of gender reassignment that adopted children may face in these countries. Aren't we the last one left that allows this in children? England and I think most of the European countries have put an end to this with children. So Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a bill banning the adoption of Russian babies by people in countries that have legalized sex changes and gender transitioning. The Russian leader also approved another law that stops the dissemination of material that tries to persuade couples not to procreate, the Associated Press reported. The bills were passed by both houses of Russia's parliament and are part of Putin's agenda to support traditional Russian family, right, and block the promotion of LGBTQ-friendly or gender ideology policies. Now, I can't remember the last time that I agreed with Putin, but I guess he does enough stuff, and every now and then that might happen. Now, I mentioned when I talked about Jonathan Turley, there's another story out of the George Washington University, and there was a story that came out a few months ago, and the Washington Post was all over it then. The headline was, "In D.C., a unique shelter for the homeless will serve couples, families." And this was a big lie that the Washington Post was telling at the time. And the mayor of Washington, D.C., spent $27.5 million buying a dormitory building at the George Washington University here in Washington, D.C. $27.5 million. Bought the dorm. Why would they buy a dorm? The city, why would they buy a dorm at the university? And why would the university sell it? Well, they're really a real estate investment firm with kind of a school attached. I believe the George Washington University is the most expensive university in the United States of America. I know I've read that recently. But that was the story from months ago in the Washington Post. And then they changed their minds. And now it's no longer a shelter for homeless couples or families. Now they're preparing to open, and it's completely different. WUSA Channel 9 here in Washington, D.C. D.C. transforms old college dorms, plural, into transitional shelter for adults facing homelessness. What happened to the couples and families thing? They always sell it on, it's families, it's women with children. They put one of those in my neighborhood. They're putting homeless shelters in all the best neighborhoods in Washington, D.C. because they want to ruin the neighborhoods and they want people to flee the city. The Aston is a new housing option as part of D.C.'s adult homeless service systems. Now, a new shelter in the West End neighborhood celebrated Monday as part of a transformation of D.C.'s system for people facing homelessness. Mayor Muriel Bowser, radical left-wing Democrat extremist, cut the ribbon on the Aston. It's a new non-congregate housing option and part of D.C.'s adult homeless service system, right? The former George Washington University dormitory, located on New Hampshire Avenue Northwest, as it has semi-private rooms and individualized case management to help permanent housing. They want to find permanent housing. That's a good idea. To help find permanent housing, according to the mayor's office. Now, here's the thing. I'm all for helping the homeless get back on their feet and get to a place where they can live permanently. But you take a college campus and turn it into a homeless campus by taking over multiple dormitory buildings with taxpayer dollars, tens and tens of millions of dollars. And you say, oh, it's just going to be for couples and families. And then by the time it opens, it's not just for couples and families. It's for men. How do you think most men get homeless? By losing their job? Maybe by drug use, maybe by mental illness, maybe by being kicked out of every place they've ever been allowed to stay by family and by friends. And you know, it's a terrible, horrible thing, of course, but you don't put it on a college campus. You don't put it next to a grammar school. You don't put it in the best neighborhoods in the city of Washington, which is what they're doing here, because they destroy everything they touch. D.C. officials expect residents to stay at the Aston for an estimated 90 days until they're connected with permanent housing. So it's they know it's a temporary thing. You may have a prison record. You probably have a drug history. You probably are not doing well at finding a studio apartment and holding a job and having your own place to stay. So there's probably something wrong here, and you go ahead and take $27.5 million and buy dormitories on the campus of the most expensive university in the United States of America and fill it with homeless people with drugs and mental illness and crime and violence. And then you say, hey, this is a really good idea. Wah, wah, wah. That's what Democrats do. Amazing. The story in the New York Post today. Not in the Washington Post because they don't report the news. Europe preps for World War III. Oh, that sounds like a good idea because, that does require some preparation. As German docks reveal plan for 800,000 troops in case Russia invades NATO. I don't think Putin's Russia is likely to do that, but it's best to be prepared because hope is not a strategy. Secret documents revealed that Berlin has begun making plans for how it could deploy as many as 800,000 NATO troops, including Americans, into Ukraine as Russia's nuclear saber rattling reaches new heights. Operation Deutschland. I don't think that's a good name for an operation. I'm a little old-fashioned when it comes to Deutschland, but Operation Deutschland über alles is a 1,000-page plan to prepare Germany for the possibility of World War III. The top-secret papers reportedly detail specific buildings and infrastructure to protect so they can be utilized by the military and how businesses and civilians could prepare in case of increased threats. It sounds like, let's see, they got businesses and the government preparing. I think that kind of goes to Benito Mussolini's definition of fascism as a merger of state and corporate power, but never mind any of that. So the businesses and the government preparing for World War III in Germany under Operation Deutschland, it's not really Deutschland über alles, it's just Operation Deutschland. But it's funnier when you add Deutschland über alles to the end of Deutschland. According to the German newspaper Frankfurter, so they also suggested Berlin was prepared and preparing a way to push 200,000 military vehicles across German territory should the alliance be required to join Ukraine's efforts, though further details were kept classified. But they leaked that much because, you got to leak a certain amount. Putin playing with our fear. Well, he's a communist leader. What do you expect? This is what communists do. Wah, wah, wah. Yes, sir. Germany has also advised citizens in Deutschland on ways to prepare for the worst by boosting their self-sufficiency through mechanisms including installing diesel generators. But what about global warming and climate change and the rise of the oceans? Or even wind turbines? So you know that liberals are behind it when they say, oh, get a wind turbine for your house because World War III is coming. The alarm is not contained to Germany. Sweden and Norway have also recently issued pamphlets and literature instructing citizens on how to prepare should the Ukraine conflict boil over into their countries. And they, of course, just joined NATO, so then you really do have World War III. And where's Joe Biden in all this, and where are the peace talks? And shouldn't they be arguing over the shape of the table or something like that? Just amazing stuff. All right. Yes, sir. Now, the Democrats, we have Democrats all over the country that are planning on being part of the resistance to the Trump administration because they're communists, like fascists. And Tom Homan, the border czar, is headed down to the border today, where he's going to meet with the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott. And Tom Homan, incoming border czar. Kamala Harris is in Hawaii, bordering the Pacific Ocean. But Tom Homan last night was on the television, and he's meeting with Texas. And in Texas, they're talking about how to secure our border and stop the flow of illegal aliens. Democrats are trying to find a way to protect illegal aliens in New York and Chicago and Washington and even Frederick, Maryland. But here's Tom Homan, the border czar.
They obviously hate President Trump more than they love their communities. So, look, I'll say it again. Don't cross the line. Do not impede us. Do not knowingly harbor and concealing an alien, or there's going to be consequences.
By the way, Frederick, Maryland now has a left-wing mayor, Frederick, Maryland, that says he's joining the resistance in Maryland to fight against allowing the deportation of illegal aliens in Frederick, Maryland, because they've got enough Democrats there that they're fighting against the rule of law and against national sovereignty and against all things good. Isn't it amazing? Yes, it is. Now, oh, yeah, there's Joe Biden, too. Joe Biden, and I'd like to get to the James O'Keefe stuff. I'm not sure I'm going to have time today with Cholan. But let's go to Joe Biden because Joe Biden, he was out there yesterday and he was babbling incoherently as he often does because his brain, that brain of his is no good.
I was thinking, I hadn't planned on saying this, but I was thinking about this when I was coming up. I was a pretty good football player in high school. I was pretty good and I had an opportunity to go and play. But my quarterback, who was All-State as well, he came along and he ended up being a quarterback for the Coast Guard Academy.
He's speaking to the Coast Guard Academy.
1912, but anyway, when we graduated.
1912, he made up another story about his playing high school football, the guy who went on to become the quarterback at the Coast Guard Academy while he's speaking to the Coast Guard Academy. Nobody believes that his story is true, of course. Speaking of Joe Biden, Venezuelan gangs are trying to recruit children from migrant families, and the NYPD has jumped in to try to stop them. The Telegraph in the UK, Venezuelan gangs recruiting child members from migrant shelters, the NYPD warns. Isn't that amazing? Man, oh man. And also on our northern border, they've shattered all records with illegal aliens coming in along our northern border, what they call the Swanton sector, the U.S.-Canada border, New Hampshire. And in the last year, they've picked up more people coming in New Hampshire from Canada than in the last 17 years combined. The Democrats are here to destroy sovereignty and the United States of America. Isn't that amazing? And companies giving up on DEI practices and their DEI training sessions and all that stuff. Did you hear about Walmart? One of the big ones coming up. Another story that, well, the Walmart story is an important story because they're rejecting DEI. But the New Zealand Navy didn't do that in time because the New Zealand Navy very proudly announced a woman captain of a $100 million New Zealand warship that she's a lesbian. And they were very proud to announce the LGBTQ lady captain of their $100 million warship. And she promptly ran the warship aground, and it sank, the $100 million warship. Online critics speculated that the captain was a DEI hire based on her resume. Officials investigating the circumstances led to the sinking of a $100 million New Zealand naval ship that was under the command of a lesbian captain with no previous ship command experience. Sure. It's the incident is New Zealand's first loss of a ship since World War II, when the Japanese were attacking them, you know. But everybody was rescued from the ship, which is good. And I think 75 crew, and they were all rescued alive. But the ship is now an attraction for scuba divers, which is going to be nice. A ship worth over $100 million gone. And for what? Perversity, inequity, delusion, people online going after him. You know, you don't cut your teeth and learn to captain on a $100 million warship. Just a thought. Pretty amazing stuff. I saw that the news media, they got some of these left-wing news media people attacking me at Mediaite because on the TV show last night, on my Newsmax show, 10 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, I called for defunding NPR. And I said that NPR is a propaganda outlet of the Democrat Party in every big city and small hamlet in America, paid for by us. I said it's like a foreign entity invaded the United States and set up this radio network. Well, that's exactly what NPR is, National Panhandler Radio. It's a Democrat Party propaganda outlet and nothing more, nothing less. Now, Walmart, I'm going to have to come back tomorrow. Walmart becomes the latest and biggest company to roll back its DEI policies, getting rid of DEI at Walmart, biggest employer.